Hey there! Are you interested in getting access to the recordings of my monthly masterclass hangouts, where we do deep dives into different travel hacking programs? If so, please check out the Patreon at patreon.com/geobreezetravel. Patreon members will also get to vote on the charity of the month, because in case you didn't already know, all of the Geobreeze travel income gets earmarked for donations to different nonprofits. That includes the income from the monthly hangouts, coaching services, and credit card affiliate signups. Links to all of those are available in the show notes. This week's Patreon shoutout goes out to Kelly. Thank you so much for being a part of the Geobreeze Travel Patreon community. Welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast, a show for anyone wanting to level up their travel hacking lifestyle. I'm your host, Julia Menez. I'm a travel hacker, coach, speaker, Filipina-American ENTJ who loves solid travel gear and using shortcuts on spreadsheets. On this show, I'm on a mission to bring you travel hackers from all walks of life to help you level up your travel hacking game. We dive into credit cards, miles, points, strategy, mindset, and the secrets behind how to travel the world for next to no cost. So, let's get hacking.
So when we had to reroute that, we had no choice. We spent $2,000 to get back home because of COVID. We're like, you either buy the ticket now or you don't come home. So we made that decision, and we knew that was money we'd never see again. But thankfully, because of all the policies that happened due to COVID, we kept a lot of vouchers from the canceled flights. And so we use some of that vouchers for the Colorado flight. And I imagine I'll probably go, see our families for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So that's probably where the vouchers will be used up on.
Hello, travel hackers. You just heard a clip from Shang Saavedra from Save My Sense. Shang is a mom, management consultant, financial influencer, and blogger living in Manhattan. In today's episode, Shang and I discuss how she and her husband saved more than $20,000 on a luxury trip to Japan and Hong Kong using points and miles. We also talk about some different money mindsets, frugality, and #DoItScared. Shang and I also discuss how many points and miles influencers make money through credit card affiliate links. Remember, never, ever, ever just apply through Google. Always use a friend or creator's links. Please especially support points and miles creators who share content from other points creators, helping to make our community more inclusive. If you're looking for more pages to support, many of these wonderful and generous creators are listed on the resources highlight of my Instagram at Geobreeze Travel. And if you would like to support this show when you apply for your next card, my affiliate links can be found in the show notes. And now, on with the show. Hey, Shang, welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast.
Thanks, Julia, for having me. Hello.
Hi, I am so excited to speak with you here today and to hear all about your amazing Japan trip that you were able to travel hack that we'll talk about a little bit later. But before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your background, your money story, how you got into the world of points and miles.
Absolutely. I'm Shang Saavedra. I'm a personal finance blogger at Save My Sense. And my story is that I reached the ability to be work optional by the time that I was 31 years old. And travel hacking is a huge part of that. I began my life with a huge privilege of having college paid for. So I started saving money with my very first paycheck. And I worked in the management consulting industry, where I learned very early on about the world of loyalty programs and points and miles and things like that. I saved a lot of my money just starting really young. And I think I got really, really serious about all of this when I started going to business school. So that was in 2010. And not only was I increasing my savings rates, I was also looking into ways to decrease the cost of travel, because a ton of business school students just love to travel in general. And that's when travel hacking started for me. And it's been a huge part, because by the time that I was really, really into what is commonly known today as FIRE, financial independence, retire early, I was uber frugal. So travel hacking was a huge part of keeping one of my nice to have expenses, which is travel, down to a minimum, while I tried to save and invest as much as possible to reach work optionality, which is where I am today.
That's awesome. Did your love for travel have anything to do with your career choices for management consulting? Because you were like, oh, I get to travel all the time and they pay for all of these different perks. How did you decide on your career trajectory?
Yeah. Funny enough, I actually landed in a firm that does not travel all that much, and it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise. Back when I was really young, I wish I could have traveled more, but now that I'm a mom and I'm a lot older, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I'm with this company and not other famous ones. That being said, my love for travel actually came from my childhood. I grew up and I was born in China. My parents and I left when I was 3. We lived in Europe until I was 10 years old. Then we moved to the United States. So I had an appreciation just for being around other cultures when I was very young. And I'd always thought that I just wanted to see more of the world to experience cultures no matter what. And so I always sought to live in really large cities and be near airports to be able to go. And oh my gosh, I worked on some air air travel projects when I first started consulting, and that just helped feed the bug. It just I guess I get such a thrill being inside airports, and that's a major part is the movement and being a citizen of the world, so to speak.
That's amazing. That's such a dream lifestyle for a lot of people of just getting to live in a whole bunch of different countries as you're growing up and getting to experience that because a lot of people don't get to experience it until they're adults or hear that they can travel for free from this podcast or some other points blog. When you first got started with travel hacking, what were some of the first cards you opened? Were you one of the people who did one card at a time, or were you one of the people who was like, let's grab 15 cards, let's go all in? How did you get started first?
Yeah, my first start was just trying to understand how this all worked. It just so happened that I went to business school at University of Chicago. So most people fly United out of there for international travel. So I opened the United Mileage Explorer card and got the sign up bonus. And I met my husband at that time. And he said, why don't we take an international trip for spring break, our first trip together? And I noticed that he was using points to book his flights. And I was like, okay, let me try to book with points that I have. And I'm like, look deep into my accounts. I was like, I have some measly amount of Delta points. He's like, that's not enough to get you there. He's like, you need to get more. I'm like, how? He's like, well, Delta miles are not that great. They're called Sky Pesos. You need to buy some more points. And I'm like, I don't understand anything that you're saying. Turns out my husband is actually the travel hacker. So I learned actually everything from him. He's the travel hacker in our family. But for me, I do help earn a lot of money and I run a business. So a lot of the hacking ability comes from me because I was the breadwinner in the household for many, many years.
This is fascinating because almost everybody who we bring onto the podcast is the player one who's more into travel hacking, who's like trying to get their spouse into it while their spouse is just like, hun, this is weird. Like, this is really weird. But you are actually like the player two who got brought on to
Yes.
the game. That's
Yes.
incredible. So, what were your thoughts when you were first introduced into travel hacking? Were you like, this makes sense? Or you're like, this makes no sense?
I had no idea how powerful it was because so we took a trip to Southeast Asia other than the flight that I booked on points with extra bought Sky Pesos. I paid cash for almost everything else, and I didn't really pay attention to what my husband was doing at that time. I didn't really know. Then we got married pretty soon after we met. A couple years later, we got married, and then he was the one who booked the honeymoon. He booked the honeymoon was Japan, and he went all out with what was it? At that time, it was a ton of SPG points, Starwoods, and the flights also booked on points. And when I calculated the cost of everything, I was like, how long did it take for you to get all these points? He's like, it took a lot of work. And I never appreciated how much work it was until finally when we got married and I saw him doing all of the hard work necessary to book all these flights, to track everything, to keep up to date with the changes in the signups. That's when I was like, wow, this is great because I love travel, but this is also a ton of work. So my husband still continues to be the main hacker, so to speak, in the relationship, and I just follow his instructions.
So tell us
Okay.
a little bit about how you booked this first flight to Japan. What airlines were you flying? What points currencies were you using? How did you do this first trip to Japan?
Yeah, the first trip was pretty basic. So Starwood points to basically stay at mostly Sheraton hotels. We stayed at Sheratons in both Kyoto as well as Tokyo. For flights, I believe that we flew, so that would have been points that we earned via United transferred to ANA to book the flights. So very regular economy seats and Sheraton hotels, but he did write in and we got upgrades at the Sheraton hotels.
That's awesome. He just wrote to the airline and said, "Hey, we're on our honeymoon. Can you give us upgraded seats?"
He wrote the hotels, so we didn't get upgraded seats. We just flew normal economy class.
Oh,
But for the hotels, yes, he said very nicely, we're on our honeymoon. And at that point, my husband did have pretty high ranking within the Starwood program, and so we were able to get upgraded rooms.
that's an awesome early flight in your travel hacking journey. That's so cool.
Yes, yeah.
When you were first getting started, did you make any mistakes of travel hacking, as everybody makes mistakes with travel hacking? Were there any that stood out in your mind where you're like, "Hey, kids, don't do this"?
Thankfully, my husband keeps really, really clean records, but I will say that sometimes he tells me to go sign up for a credit card and I kind of ignore the email because I get so many emails and then I forget to do it. Another one is on occasion, we'll fly during really busy holiday periods to see our parents. And then we voluntarily bump ourselves from flights to get the vouchers that they offer. And then you do have to use the vouchers within 1 year from that day. Sometimes I'm pretty bad at keeping track of the dates of those vouchers. So if my husband had not been reminding me, he's like, hey, what time does your voucher run out? I would have forgotten to use the voucher and book a flight out of it. So my suggestion is definitely check the expiration dates on your vouchers.
That's a good tip. Oh, that would be so heartbreaking if you're thinking you can get a free flight with this voucher and then suddenly your travel bank credits expire or something else like that.
Exactly. Yep.
So, when you're visiting your family, where are his parents located? Where are your parents located, and how easy or difficult of a flight is that to travel hack?
Yeah. My parents are in the Midwest. His parents are in Southern California. I would say flights to Southern California are a lot easier to hack. There's just a lot more availability, so you can get some cross country flights for really cheap. For my parents, we almost always pay cash just because it's one of those routes where hacking's never really worth the trouble.
I've been there. I grew up in Blue Springs, Missouri, went to school in Nebraska, and then my husband's family lives in western South Dakota, and I'm like, how are our families in the Midwest and like the most difficult places to travel hack?
Exactly.
So I
Yep.
feel that it's a lot easier to earn points out there sometimes because in New York, when you're trying to do like different gift card tricks or something, it's just harder. There's more like regulation and scrutiny out here where if you're in the Wild West, they'll let you do whatever. But it also
Mhm.
takes so many more points to get a free flight from Omaha or South Dakota or anything like that. So there's the
Yeah.
trade offs of whatever part of the country you're in.
Yeah, most of our hacking, I would say, is for international trips just because there's a lot more really cool routes that you can do in all those sort of really crazy parts of the award charts that people don't fully consider. We actually almost pulled off a hack where you use Turkish Air to book a flight from East Coast, from New York City to Hawaii, and basically you get the super super cheap redemption. You have to call in to get it done. You have to go to a Turkish Air desk, which is actually quite difficult to do. We did it, but then I had my high risk pregnancy during the month when we had booked that trip. So we had to cancel it due to health reasons. But almost could have gone to Hawaii on Turkish Air Miles. That would have been amazing.
The Turkish Miles and Smiles program is an amazing gem that very few people know about. I think you
Yeah.
can only transfer those points from a city card. Is that correct?
I don't remember how we transferred, but it's definitely not an easy hack to do. You have to be super prepared. You have to wait a few days for the transfer to happen. You have to confirm and make sure that the availability is there. And then you have to still jump through the hoop of booking it, either using a counter or trying to find one of the sales associates and really begging them through email. So definitely not something that I would have attempted.
Oh, yeah, this is not a beginner trick because, right, I completely forgot about that detail where most of the time when you transfer points, it's instantaneous. You go from your Chase portal to Southwest or something, 2 minutes later, there are your points. That is not the case with Turkish Miles and Smiles. You look for award availability, price it out, how many points you're going to need, transfer the points. And then just pray for 2 or 3 days where you're like, please let the availability still be there in 2 to 3 days when the points show up in my Turkish account. And then if you're lucky, you get to have a one-way flight to Hawaii for as low as 7,500 points or something like that, which is $75
Yeah.
for one way to Hawaii, which is really nice. But yeah, if the award availability disappears, that's never a fun time.
Yep. You're out of luck.
Yeah. So whenever you're visiting your family and talking to them about travel hacks, what are their thoughts on all of this? Are they like, "Oh, we should get in on this too," or are they like, "Shang, this is completely insane"?
My family's all over. Both our families are, but in different flavors. My dad, he travels internationally a lot for work. So work pays for all that travel and he banks the points and the status from that. So he has lifetime status with United, for example. And so he's all over travel hacking and he's really all about the upgrades. So he tries to find ways to get upgraded business class international flights wherever possible. That's his thing. That's his strategy. My in-laws are not in a economic position to be able to hack as easily, and they don't want to. But what they do help with is they also do a lot of credit card signups, and then together we as a family we have a British Airways family account. So British Airways does allow more flexibility of sharing miles between friends and family. That's the main way that we would pass miles back and forth between us and my in-laws. We either use it as a quote unquote in kind payment to each other when we travel together, or we might bank it for a future trip for either side. It changes literally year by year how we handle it.
That's so cool. What are some of like the bigger family, extended family trips that you guys have gotten to take together?
Yeah, not a lot because it's really hard to get our schedules aligned. But the biggest two trips in recent memory, one was taking my in-laws to the Mediterranean for the first time, so they got to see Rome, Athens, Istanbul, and then we did a basically like a 8-day trip of Israel. My in-laws are Jewish, so it was really really meaningful to them. That trip was the flights were all hacked. Hotels, not so much because it was mostly, I want to say, like no name hotels. Rental car, I think that one might have been hacked as well with Chase points. That might have been it. The second trip that we did together with my in-laws is Alaska, and that one the flights were hacked. My husband has MVP status with Alaska Airlines, and that comes with a ton of perks, including their companion pass, which is sorry, not companion. They have a companion fare, which is really incredible. You get a lot of value out of that. Then for Alaska, the car rental was Chase Ultimate Rewards points. Hotels, we mostly paid cash because there's not a lot of name brands out there. One cool thing that we did was a day cruise, like a cruise where you can see like whales and stuff. That one I used the Chase Ultimate Rewards portal to book because it was like a $600 thing all in once you account for the four people in the boat.
That sounds like an amazing trip. Let's back up a little bit and talk about like money mindset of your family versus his family because I know that you talk a little bit on Instagram about your money mindset, his money mindset, and you do um, courses on helping people with retirement, and you just have so much incredible money content on your Instagram. How has that affected your travel hacking styles?
I would say when I was younger, I took a lot of travel and luxury travel for granted. And that's because, I went to really great schools. I went to Harvard and I went to University of Chicago. I'm surrounded by very well off friends. I work in an industry that pays a lot. I'm around people who are paid a lot. And when you see what they post on social media for where they go for their honeymoons, where they go for their birthdays, it starts to set up the expectation that you should live life in this way. So in my early 20s, I always thought and expected that I would be doing luxury travel for the rest of my life because I was like, that's what you do when you make a lot of money. When I started my journey to early retirement and I became super frugal, I was frugal in everything. I like got my cooking, like I made meals for like $2 a serving. Like that was how cheap I went. I let go of taking cabs in New York. I only took public transportation. I kept a capsule wardrobe, so I didn't like buy new clothes for a few years. And the only mind and people would look at that lifestyle that I had at that time. He's like, Shang, were you missing out? Like, did you not have fun? Like, you sound like a super frugal, boring person during those years. And for me, I realized the mindset that I had to flip to was one of gratitude. I use this hashtag now called hashtag I get to. It's just saying, like, instead of saying I have to, say I get to. So instead of, oh, I have to get up to go to work, I get to get up and go to work. Employment is a blessing. And getting to travel and see the world is a blessing because, like, gosh, there's so many people around the world who can't even do that. So travel hacking is just the icing on the cake. It just allows me to afford it better, but it's not a given. And I don't ever want to take that for granted. And by teaching that mindset of gratitude, of joy to others, it helps other people who, wherever you might be on your financial journey, like some people that who learn from me are just trying to get out of credit card debt. Some people are getting rid of student loans. Some people are ready to go on a early retirement journey like I was. But for so many of the people that I teach, fear is what's holding their minds back right now. And that fear can take hold of your mental health and drag down your financial health. And so once you introduce gratitude and joy, it really destroys all the past trauma that you might have been holding on to and the misconceptions that you had about money and brings abundance into your life. And from abundance, you can have a very full life, even if it's never without any luxury, because you recognize and you're grateful for all the privileges that you already have.
I love that. And I love your Instagram too. It's always just so full of positivity and abundance too, because in the travel space and the money space, and okay, really, honestly, any space on the internet, we find a lot of fear of people just talking about everything that can go wrong. For example, with travel hacking, like this will destroy your credit score. Like, do you really want to be traveling right now anyway? Even if you don't, it's a good time to bank up these points and miles, or just everything that can go wrong with having a dozen credit cards, which if you want to have more, you can. If you want to have only 5 credit cards and do travel hacking, that's possible too. But there's always just so many different fears surrounding travel hacking or anything with money, investments, budgeting, how to do early retirement stuff. What do you normally tell people who just come to you with like fears and fears and fears?
Yeah. To get you into a mindset where you recognize that fear is normal. Like having fear is actually quite normal because our brains have to protect us to some extent from harm. That's why we do have the emotion fear. I don't think fear will ever go away, but I think it's really important that we learn to live and manage our fears such that they don't take up an overwhelming amount of space in our mind. So I have a second hashtag that I promote called hashtag do it scared. You're going to do it scared, but do it anyway. And the reason why I love this concept is because I think way too many people wait until they feel like they have it perfect before they start. When I first started travel hacking, first of all, I didn't even know it was called travel hacking. I'm just like, oh, I'm learning how to use my points and miles so they don't like sit there doing nothing. And I started with one credit card, the United Mileage Plus Explorer, which is not, a very famous card that people write about these days. And then I started adding, I think my next card was like an American Airlines one. Again, not something. And then like maybe my fourth card was a Chase Sapphire card. And then you kind of, keep going. And I learned a little bit every time and I had fun. And I think when you let yourself do things scared, you don't put all this undue pressure to be perfect and to have it all right. In fact, I do investing now, and there's things that I don't invest in. Like I don't invest in crypto or NTC or a lot of these new classes of investments. Might I miss out on something really great? Sure, but I don't fear that I might be missing out on a great investment because I love the strategy that I already have when it comes to investing for retirement. And I think that's the level of confidence that I want to push people towards by starting out saying, I'm ready to do something scared, but I'm going to do it anyway.
What are you doing scared these days?
Being a mom, children don't come with instruction booklets. And I think mommy guilt is real. And I actually really try to just be that radical mom who goes, I'm feeling great as a mom. I'm feeling great about my decisions. They are the right ones for my family. And I try not to beat myself up over it.
That's important. That's really important for all the moms listening right now to hear as well. So I
Yep.
love that. Have you traveled much with your son?
We did until pandemic hit. So actually his first flight was at 7 weeks old. And that was to California to see his grandparents, my in-laws. And then we had planned on a significant year of travel because I had taken a 1 year maternity leave when I first had my son. So and my husband's job is very flexible. Even before pandemic, he could work from anywhere. So we planned, for example, we were in Hawaii for a month. We did get to do that. Then we were doing a dream trip that was supposed to be Fiji, Australia, New Zealand. And then there was supposed to be like Singapore and Southeast Asia, but then like COVID started taking over. So then we rerouted to Los Angeles and we're like, we'll do Los Angeles and then Bay Area and then we'll go home and then reevaluate. In the middle of us being in New Zealand and we saw COVID start to explode in New York, we're like, we probably should head home. And we rerouted our flights. We were on the hold line for American Airlines for 2 hours with spotty cell phone reception, driving as fast as we could down the mountains of New Zealand to try to get to Christchurch, got our tickets rerouted, and it turns out we left New Zealand one day before they closed their borders. So thankfully, we avoided having to be on a repatriation flight. Thank God, but that killed our grand plans for 2020. But our next flight, we are both fully vaccinated. My husband and I will be traveling to Colorado in June of 2021. BB, our child, will be with my parents at that time, and then we'll see where else we can go.
That's awesome. And also white knuckle ride type of story right there. I was like, oh my God, that's doing it scared, where you're just like racing down a mountain. Were you having to use points and miles to do all this? Or like was it complicated because it was a travel hack flight? What were the logistics?
Yeah, it was complicated because it was partially a trip that was paid for by my current employer because we had a international meeting. That meeting got moved around, which is part of the complication. We rebooked our tickets 3 times because the meeting kept getting moved around. The meeting comes with a stipend. The stipulation is that you just have to, end up at the meeting and back home, right? So you use the airports as the measure. And then we just rerouted the in between flights, and then we would pay for or use points for extra flights in between. And I remember, I believe that we paid cash for most of them, just because at that time, because we booked so late, there was just not enough time to do a lot of points hacking. But the key ones that used miles were, for example, going from Los Angeles to Fiji and then going from Christchurch back to Los Angeles. And so when we had to reroute that, we had no choice. We spent $2,000 to get back home because of COVID. We're like, you either buy the ticket now or you don't come home. So we made that decision, and we knew that that was money we never see again. But thankfully, because of all the policies that happened due to COVID, we kept a lot of vouchers on the canceled flights. And so we use some of that vouchers for the Colorado flight. And I imagine I'll probably go, see our families for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So that's probably where the vouchers will be used up on.
Sounds good. So, was that the trip that you've used the most travel hacks on, or what's like your biggest travel hack trip that you've ever taken?
Yeah. The biggest travel hack of my life was actually not that. It was late 2018 into early 2019, a luxury trip to Hong Kong and Japan, retail value $20,000. That was the mother of all travel hacks for the Save My Sense family. At that time, it was just me and my husband. I actually was going through infertility treatments. And what was crazy was that we didn't know when we get pregnant, and we had this dream trip in mind. And I said, let's just book it. If we got pregnant, hey, cool, turn it into a baby moon. Ended up having a failed cycle. We went anyway. The reason why the trip cost so much was business class flights all the way. So business class from Los Angeles to Hong Kong to Japan via a routing in Indonesia. That was business class. And then from Japan back to New York. That was business class. This was over New Year's. So in Hong Kong, we spent New Year's Eve and we stayed at hotels like the Intercon, the Marriott. I mean, those went for like $1,000 a night at that point because of demand. And we booked that all on points. And then in Japan, we did Crown Plaza a couple of times. So we did a lot through that program. And then one night we did the Grand Hyatt in Kyoto, where one of my friends who has, great status with them, we transferred the points to her. She booked a room on our behalf and then gave us the guest of honor privilege, which meant that our room got upgraded and we got free breakfast, which was amazing. So the once I added all of that together, it blew my mind. I was like, "Hubby, this was $20,000." He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Holy cow!" So that was a very memorable trip.
I love the guest of honor perk. You have a globalist friend and then you just have them make your booking for you. You just transfer the points around a little bit. And yeah, you get treated like your globalist. It comes with the late checkout, upgrade upon availability, the free breakfast, the free lounge access. So pays to have friends with these different travel hacking benefits. Tell us a little
Woo!
bit about the flights that you took and how you were able to travel hack those, what cards you used, how did you earn points, what's the process to get those?
Yeah. And I believe the flights over were on Cathay Pacific using transfers from our American Airlines account. And the reason why we still had a ton of miles on American Airlines is because my husband flew British Airways to India. He would go to India about 4 or 5 times a year for his work, and he would fly British Airways business class, paid for by his company each time. So that was a lot of the hacking happened right there. The Marriott points, primarily the earning came from both him and me. So he would stay in Marriott properties in India. And then in 2018, I actually had a 3-week international assignment in Germany where I just stayed in a ton of Marriott properties as well, paid for by my company. And then, you add like extra bonus spend on top or bonus programs. It created, this very large amount of points that we could burn on Marriott. Then IHG, we actually both we signed up for the IHG Chase cards in that year. So with the bonuses from IHG, that's how we booked some of the Crown Plaza bookings in Japan.
That is incredible. $20,000.
Yep, yep,
Nice.
pretty awesome. Hard to replicate nowadays. We don't do such luxurious things with our points anymore. But
I'm just imagining your toddler in like a lay flat seat and being like, wow, like I have enough room for all of my toys on this seat too.
Funny enough, we looked at how hard it would be to hack business class when you have a child under 2 years old. Turns out you need to pay 10% of the retail price of it when you request the lap child. And so that did give us pause a little bit for traveling with our child going forward. I imagine at least 40 years where he's not going to really remember it. We might have my parents watch him and my husband and I go travel, and then when he gets a little bit older we'll definitely bring him with us, but we probably will do coach or economy plus because he really shouldn't be flying business class. I don't know. I just have this thing where I just don't think children should be flying business class that early.
So, with all of like the travel hacking that you've done, have you come up with any just unique viewpoints on the entire game from either your background or your experiences or anything else?
Yeah, I think when people look at the history of my travel hacking, at least the stuff that I've shared on social media, and unlike Julia, I don't blog that much about travel hacking. One, because my husband does most of it, and I don't remember all the details. Like I clearly have flubbed my airlines and loyalty programs. But second, also, it looks like we do a lot of luxury. But the moment that we had a kid, I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you just got to cover what you got to cover. So during pandemic, we left New York for a year. So our home is in New York, but we made the really tough decision to leave because we just didn't feel it was safe enough for us to live. And we stayed in different places, stayed with my parents in California. My in-laws have space to host us. And we also wanted to quarantine before we saw them. We spent a ton of our Marriott points on residence inns. it's not a sexy redemption. Most people don't think about a residence inn when they travel, but it just made so much sense for us as a family because it came with a kitchen. There was a ton of space. We got upgraded into duplexes in some instances. So I would say, yeah, if it meets your needs, it's okay to travel hack for non-luxury redemptions if it makes sense for your family. And I find no shame in doing that.
That's awesome. And that's really the name of the game that we have on this podcast is no shame with travel hacking. There's so many different ways to live a travel hacking lifestyle.
Yep.
Cool. So, with your travel hacking lifestyle, what is the number one piece of advice that you have for listeners today that I can put on an Instagram quote card?
Yes. Be kind to customer service reps. Just be nice. You never know who can make or break your travel experience just by you being nice to them. And they really, they don't deserve all the hate that they get.
That is a good one. That is one that we haven't had anybody really mention on the show before, but that's such good advice. Do you have a story behind that? Has
Yeah.
a trip ever been made or broken by customer service?
Um, I don't recall specifics, but I would remember that if I'm nice to somebody on the phone, they might tell me some extra details about a rule that I might not be aware of. In hotels, for sure. Like if you're nice to, the concierge or the customer service rep that you wrote to get your upgrade, and you really thank them and explain like why this trip is so meaningful for you, that's actually how my husband and I get these upgrades that normally we shouldn't have gotten. Like we've gotten upgrades that go way beyond the level that's typically allowed in a loyalty program. We've gotten suites, we've gotten, corner rooms, things like that. And I attribute that really all to we're nice to them. We explain what the trip is for. We thank them. We show them how meaningful this property is. And we get that really nice upgrade. So it never hurts to be nice.
That is awesome advice. And speaking of doing something nice, we like to do shout outs on this show. So, can you give a shout out to another travel hacker that people should go check out?
Aunt Kara, that's aunt, as in your aunt and uncle, dot Kara. I love her because she has a very similar audience as mine, where we address both retirement, saving, and finance, as well as travel hacking.
We keep trying to inception her to like join all of our follow loops with travel hacking where we're just like, let's share all of each other's accounts and then like help people find more travel hacking that way too, because we've built up such a great Instagram community with all of the different travel hackers and sharing each other's stuff. So it's always great to get more people into the community and sharing each other's stuff and helping people to find each other.
For sure. And Jula, you were literally one of the first travel hacking focused Instagrams I ever followed. So it's just incredible to be on here and to be chatting with you as well.
Thank you so much. And speaking of Instagram, where can we find you on Instagram and all over the internet?
Yeah, I'm a little bit selective. I'm boring in that I mainly do Instagram and my blog. So Instagram, I'm Save My Sense, all one word. And then my blog is savemysense.com. I look forward to hearing from y'all. You can DM me, we can chat. There's definitely a lot more than what I publish, but sometimes I just can't get it out there in time.
And I feel like you're sitting on 500 emails or DMs per day where you have another hashtag that we didn't talk about today of Google it because people ask you all sorts of questions about retirement and everything. Like, what's the max contribution I can make to my 401k this year? That's easy to Google. Like, people should Google those things.
I think what makes it hard for people to Google is you also don't know what to trust these days. I mean, with the explosion of paid media placements, blogs that are just there to sell advertisements, I can totally get sometimes you're like, gosh, I don't trust this. But in the investing world, two websites I highly recommend. One is irs.gov. Yes, it's a very ugly government website, but that is your source for all rules when it comes to taxes and retirement accounts. And then two, I really love investopedia.com. They explain investing to you like a human, not like a robot. So definitely check those two resources out.
That's an awesome point about all of the paid ads and everything. And I think it's starting to happen more with travel hacking, where people are just in it to sell credit cards where like they don't want to help you with like a strategy, or they're just like, here's the one where I'm going to get like the most affiliate commissions. Just like use my links, use my links. And I'm like, it's like if you DM someone, you're like, I have a question. And their first response is like, here's my link, apply to this. Instead of like actually answering your travel hacking question, like get a second opinion. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of us in the travel hacking community. There's a lot of people out there who really like, they say they want to help people, but they really just want to like shove credit card applications at as many people as they can, which, well, I'm trying to keep that from happening and like tell people like don't do that. Like ask questions first. Like talk to an actual person instead of just applying for all the credit cards, getting shiny card syndrome, doing whatever ads or like people who are desperate to get commissions tell you to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, we unfortunately don't have an irs.gov credit cards, but yeah, maybe one day.
It's tough. I definitely hear it. I am an affiliate as well. I actually don't make most of my money, and I actually don't keep the money that I make from Save My Sense. It's all earmarked for philanthropy. But I hear you. I've seen the rate cards for how much people get paid for each credit card sign up. If you ever approach people who talk about travel hacking, they send you a link. They should be telling you that this is an affiliate link. They should disclose that they could make money from it, and just take everything with a grain of salt. Definitely do your own research and try not to rely on just one source for information. If you get multiple opinions, I think that's much better than just one.
Absolutely. And I love that you earmark all of your stuff for donations. You were actually my inspiration for me doing that too, because I too have a day job and don't need the money from Geobreeze. So everyone in the Patreon just votes for a different nonprofit each month. And that's where donations get earmarked for. I've so far just been donating the proceeds from the hangouts and the master classes we do each month because I don't have an accounting system in place. And I know, Shang, you are like the queen of systems. So I'm closely watching your stories, being like, okay, so how do you earmark and do all of those
Yeah.
things?
For I had hoped to eventually set up a foundation. I mean, that would mean like millions of dollars. That's an aspiration, and that can still happen. But in the meantime, I've kind of split the money where some of it goes directly to some charities right away that I've been donating to for years. Some of it goes to what's called a donor advised fund. So it goes in, it immediately becomes, you can only send it to charities, but it's invested in the meantime. And then I'm still holding some money in a taxable investing account until I figure out, hey, do I really think that foundation life eventually is for me or not? I don't know. This is the part where I am doing it scared. I don't know the answers, but I'm having fun regardless.
That's awesome. Well, we have learned so much from you today. It was such a pleasure having you on the show, learning about your Japan trip and your background with travel hacking, mom life, and doing it scared, and all of your money knowledge as well. So, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Geobreeze Travel Podcast. If any of the cards mentioned in today's episode piqued your interest, please check out the links in the show notes for more information on any of the cards. Also, if you apply for a card using the links on that page, I may receive a commission too, so please and thank you. P.S. I hear the links work better in Internet Explorer or Safari, and sometimes the credit card applications tend to glitch out in Chrome. Additionally, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a 5-star review, and share it with a friend. And if you would like to make even more travel hacking friends, please sign up for the Patreon to access our monthly masterclass hangouts. We dive deep into a particular points program each month, and you'll get to ask all of your travel hacking questions and enjoy being around other people who enjoy points and miles just as much as you and I do. If you would like an invite to the next one, head over to geobreezetravel.com/hangouts to sign up to be on the invite list. Take care and happy travels!